we're a little light on participants.
Doing, Ty?
Well, just kind of according to replies, we have Christy from DOJ. We might be waiting on. Let's see, Christopher Griffin, Carl Koenig, Brian Stewart, Mike Hussey.
Would it be worth resending that link
Yeah.
out to the full group, Cassie, and just, or Amanda, or whoever's running it, and just say, hey, meeting's starting now? And because a lot of them did confirm. I'm looking at the number of people that had confirmed attendance. We have a lot more that aren't here right now.
Yeah.
Then we'll give it a couple more minutes. Cassie, Adam, Amanda, if you all ready, I think we can kick this thing off.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Um, let's see. All right, well, I will share the agenda here with everybody on the screen.
Not seeing it yet.
Second, looking forward here. Agenda. All right, are folks able to see that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So, welcome everybody to the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the Rural Structural Fire Protection Review Task Force. Likely this will be our committee's last meeting, so I just wanted to start and say thank you. It's been a lot of work by everybody on the committee and a lot of really good contributions and thoughts along the way. Pretty pleased with the product that you all have helped develop and the work that we're completing. So I just wanted to thank everybody for your help and support through the process, as well as staff for OSFM. Been great. And I know it's not the end of the work for you, probably beginning for some of you, but just want to recognize how far we've came in a pretty short time. So thank you for that. And Adam, did you have any thoughts or observations as we get rolling here?
Yeah, just I really appreciate being a part of this as well. And I know I was away for a few months, but everybody has just been really wonderful contributing. Chair Johnson leading this effort. I really, really appreciate all your work. We were sort of tasked with doing this comprehensive review of 478, and we marched through that chapter and even went above and beyond by looking at sort of further sections that we need to do more work on. But we've met 10 times between October 2023 and now, and we're up against that September deadline. And so we've really been, I think, very successful under Chair Johnson's leadership in what we need to do here. So right on track. And I think with today, we're really looking at just the final substantive changes that folks might have for recommendations for the report. I know everybody's had a chance to look at it a number of times, different iterations. And so there shouldn't be a lot left, I think. Nothing should be a surprise. But if we have those substantive changes when we get to it, then that's wonderful. And really don't worry about like spelling and grammatical stuff. We'll go through and deal with that stuff later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Adam. And so just looking ahead at what we have on our plan for today, certainly we'll review the minutes, approve those, then we'll get right into the report itself. And as Adam mentioned, we're not really looking today for wordsmithing, real small issues. We'll rely on staff to do some of that, but it's more of, are there substantive changes that need to be made to the draft report? Is there something missing? More of those bigger picture issues rely on staff to work out some of the finer details on it. So we should be able to, we'll take it sort of chapter by chapter, I think is the plan for today, and go through it. So without any further ado, are there any comments on the June 27th minutes? Did everybody have a chance to receive those?
I can share that as well.
Okay.
They looked acceptable to me.
Okay. Would someone like to move to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Okay.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the June 27th meeting. If anybody is opposed to that, then we will pass that motion unanimously. Anybody opposed to approving the minutes as submitted? All right, minutes are approved. All right, Adam, let's move right into reviewing the draft task force report.
All right. So we've got Cassie on the line, and I think she was going to do just a brief overview once again of kind of the different sections. I will share the report on my screen. And so maybe Cassie, you can kind of give us the 5-minute kind of review of what we're looking at, and how we've gotten to this point, and then we can go through, as Chair Johnson said, section by section.
Sure, yeah. So nothing major in this report has changed since you saw it at the very first time. It's just gotten a little bit more polished and refined. This is very much a draft form, but we are starting to design it out just to give everybody a little bit of an idea of how much nicer it will look than just a plain Word document at the end. So we have our title page, and we have our table of contents. We have an introduction. We have a message from the State Fire Marshal. You'll notice that that page is blank. I have not had a chance to connect with her yet. We have the goals and objectives of the task force and a link to the task force charter. We have a history of rural structural fire protection districts. After that, we roll into our findings and challenges, and this was, I would say, the bulk of our latest work. The categories are cost recovery, taxing authority, enterprise zones, annexation, service coverage, district boundaries, unprotected and underprotected lands, EMS modernization, recruitment, workforce service levels, mutual aid and service agreements, open burning. And then we roll into the task force recommendations, which are short, mid, and long term. And then we have a conclusion, and then another completely blank spot is the vision to guide future work. I will connect with Travis on that. And then we have an appendix of a few helpful documents for people as they read through the reports. So that's basically an overlook of this. I was going through this report draft this morning, and I did catch a few things. So if you see anything in here that you're like, oh, that should be down a line, or that's spelled wrong or whatnot, just feel free to bring it up if you would like, but don't be too concerned about it at this point, because this is a pretty rough draft. So I think we're ready to roll through.
Yep, let's go ahead and go through it.
All right. So with the introduction, just a couple people, in terms of comments we've received back, there were a couple of comments about whether we should have alternates on here. And I think the main alternate that we wanted to put in there is, of course, Brian Stewart. I think we had originally Nick Brown there, and Brian really kind of filled in and did a lot of the work. So we put his name down there. But if anybody has any other people that they believe should be on here with regard to alternates, please let us know. And then also, we were just hoping that everybody could just take one look at all the names and titles here and make sure that those are correct, because it is possible that that either titles have changed or that there could be misspellings. So
would we want to add Carl Koenig?
Is Carl not on here? I don't know. Carl just joined, so this is
Yeah,
his chance. Yes, of course, Carl. Of course, Carl should be on here. So yes, we need to make sure that Carl gets on there. And Cassie's making a note of that right now.
Me. Yes, I'm here. Not because Teams was being friendly, but I'm here. So.
All good. All good. All right. Is there any other change to this section, the introduction section, besides those names? All right.
Was Claire on there too?
You know, Claire wasn't officially a member of the committee or the task force. She was more sort of staff support. And so, yeah, I think just Travis and Mariah were the two OSFM members.
Copy.
Okay. Okay. All right, we'll keep moving.
Oh, Mike had it.
Oh, yeah, Mike.
I see his comment. Yeah, we'll get that updated. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I don't see comments here. Okay, great. So you got that, Cassie? All right. And then, as Cassie mentioned, there'll be a message from the State Fire Marshal, and of course, Mariana's been a little bit busy lately, and so we just haven't had time to track her down to get that, but that will be inserted in there as well. And then goals and objectives. And so this really goes back to the very beginning of our meeting together, what we were hoping to accomplish and complete by the end of this together. And so there's 8 different items here, I believe, nine actually. And if there's any changes to these, I can just read through them really quickly, but they should be pretty solid. It's create a shared understanding of the current state of rural fire protection districts, define problems, gaps, and challenges, identify and recommend ORS 478 changes within the scope of House Bill 2522, recommend changes that modernize and improve structural rural fire protection districts operations, identify and develop recommendations for relating Oregon revised statutes to rural fire protection districts. There's a little bullet that's misaligned there, Cassie.
Yep, this page is a little messed up. I caught these all this morning.
Okay, great. Scope and where applicable, consider other existing fire service initiatives or work groups that improve rural structure or fire protection districts, and then identify opportunities and the work needed for creating efficiencies with rural fire protection districts. So those are the goals and objectives. Any substantive changes or needs there? And then, of course, there'll be a link below for the task force charter, which was a 1 or 2 page document, I think.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
Is there any value in clarifying 2522 and what, because we had a few items that were outside of the scope. I'm not sure, are we gonna, when this gets published, is it gonna include the House bill, or I don't know if that's worth it or not, but I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah,
remember we had the 3 or 4 items that were specifically not within the scope.
We have a section down at the bottom that has out of scope items. It's there's a little bit of a breakdown of like short term, medium, and long term items, and under the short term list, and we'll get to it sort of at the very end, but it has the kind of changes, the substantive changes that as we were going through chapter by chapter of 478, and then it also says the out of scope sections that we picked out. And so that should be down there. And if you have some thoughts on that, when we get there, we can make changes. And then I think you're absolutely right that maybe attaching the bill as an appendix or something might be a good idea.
I'm going to quick pop in and say, Ty, that's a really good comment. Like Adam said, we do have this linked later in the report, but I think there might be value in just linking that right there. So if people are like, what is this? They can just click on it and go straight to the bill. So I'll add that link in.
Great. Thanks, Ty.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or changes about goals and objectives? All right. Seeing none. All right, so then next we jump into the history. So this is something that I know Cassie sort of worked with a bunch of folks on pulling together, and it's just a pretty good outline of how we got here and where we're at. I think the main question here that people had a couple comments on, I think there are 2 or 3 things. One had to do with this number right here, 64, sorry, the highlighting's not working very well. 64% of all fire districts classified as rural fire protection districts. And there was some question about whether 64% was the right number. I think we had some people say that maybe it was 73, some people say maybe it was 90%, but we talked with our analytics and intelligence guru, Eric Gimmel, and he shot us some information via an email with kind of all the stats as reported for this. And what he said was that active or responding agencies, which are the agencies with an FDID and responds to requests for service, are 298 agencies, which is about 69% of RFPDs. active contracting agencies were about 64% of RFPDs. So that was about 400 agencies. And then the category of agencies that can receive FDID are city fire departments, rural fire protection districts, water districts, and county service districts. So he sort of broke down a little bit of the information, and based on his data, he was saying that 64% was the correct number. And so with that explanation, are there other thoughts or questions or disagreements on whether maybe 64% is correct?
So I actually read that originally as 64% of fire districts are classified as rural fire protection districts, not fire agencies.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be a comment for me too, right? It's 64% of all fire departments are classified, or fire agencies are classified as rural fire. I think that's what the data is showing, isn't it?
Okay. So it's just so that's the mistake. We'll change that then. So this first district should be fire agencies.
Yeah.
Okay. We can make that. That's helpful. Any other questions with that? Okay. One of the other comments that folks made, let's get to my notes here, was about the fire, the 4 categories. And so we have city fire departments, rural fire protection districts or special districts, contract service providers operating on or for a profit basis, which include private and for-profit fire departments for subscription, and then others, and we just sort of included in others, for instance, the Kingsley Air Force Base, which is federal and tribal. So is everybody okay with those 4 classifications of different categories, or does that seem odd to folks?
That works for me, Adam. I guess just maybe a question on whether we would want to separate out tribal instead of looping them in with Kingsley. I don't know if there's a benefit either way if we want to put emphasis on tribal fire protection.
It's totally fine if folks who would like to do that.
I think you could also delete the second mention of for-profit, because it's duplicative. You could just say contract service providers operating on a for-profit basis, comma, including private fire departments operating on a subscription basis. It just kind of confusing having it listed twice.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. We can make that change. All right. And so we'll sort of separate tribal and we'll delete the second for profit. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts there? Okay. And then the last comment that I think folks submitted, and of course, please give us more comments if you have them. But the last comment that people submitted had to do with whether we use the term districts or departments in certain contexts. And so let me see if I can find this here. Agency. I don't remember where that was. Oh, fine. Maybe it was here. So throughout the report, we say districts and departments and agencies as we're talking about fire agencies, fire departments, fire districts. And I think there's probably a little bit of inconsistency throughout the report just because it was written in different places and different sections. about when we should use agency, when we should use district, and when we should use departments. And so maybe, this group can give us a little bit of like a tool or an overview of like what is the proper time or reason to use each one, so that when we go through, we can really make sure that all of them are proper. Christy, you have your hand up.
Thanks, everyone. In my experience, I'm happy to be wrong. Fire chiefs here with more experience, please jump in. But ORS 478 districts are fire districts. Those are the districts. Agencies are typically state agencies who provide fire service, and departments are cities who have a department that provides fire service. That's my experience. And that's supported by statute and the definitions regarding ORS 478. There are no statutes that say cities, fire service portions are called departments, but that's traditionally how we talk about those.
Thank you, Christy. Is that consistent with other folks' understanding?
Yeah, it is. I wonder if in the intro you just put a statement in there that agency, department, and district will be used universally.
I think that would cause a lot of confusion.
Okay.
And here's why. First of all, I'm easily confused. So if you're not confused, let me know. But in several places in this, we're talking about changes to 478, and those only would apply to districts. They would not apply to departments or agencies. So if you're using them interchangeably, you might cause some confusion.
I wonder how would you address tribal, Christie, Kingsley, and privates? Where would you lump those into those three definitions, or how, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I believe, I'm not sure, but we should look at 478 to see if tribal fire service departments or whatever. I think I would treat a tribal fire department the same as I would treat a city fire department. They're their own jurisdiction, they have their own sovereign immunity, and they have a fire department, right? I don't know what we'd call them, but that would make sense to me. Privates are privates. They're whoever they are. They're subject to our fire regulations, but they're not subject to ORS 478 or any governmental restrictions. And then military, who knows? They're going to say they're special, and they are. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is complex. I think it'll be complex for people, and maybe that's the challenge for Cassie, is how we sort of lay it out. Do you have a definition early on that say these are the classifications and the terminology used for them, and sort of their governance? I don't know how we address it in the report to make it easy for a reader who isn't in this space every day to understand it.
Yeah. All right, we've got a couple of questions. Yeah, Mike Cook.
Yeah, I would agree with Christy 100% on the tribal. I could see some challenges. They are their own sovereign entity. So I would definitely address that. And my understanding, especially with Kingsley, because I work with both these, Kingsley is governed, they're actually a state agency, correct? They're a state fire department that is governed by state rules and regs. So that is I believe the fire department is a contract from the state here at Kingsley. They're not Air Force people, they're state firefighters from the state. So that might be something taking a look at.
Thank you. Chief Hussey, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, so there's another important document that is or will be in circulation. That's the convening of the fire service. It would be nice if we could align, I guess, the definitions or just how we approach this topic through the documents.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we will work on some consistency there. And I think it sounds like fire districts through ORS, agencies through the state, and departments through the cities are pretty straightforward. And then we'll work on kind of the more exceptional situations.
Yeah.
The
See,
other
Chief-
piece, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Christy.
I don't want to throw a wrench in anybody's machinery, and we can ignore this if needed, but there is another creature, which are fire agencies or departments or organizations created through ORS 190 agreements. They're typically called fire authorities. We don't have to go there, but I just wanted to say that we should avoid using the word fire authority so as not to cause more confusion. Those fire authorities operate under ORS 478, and they're considered to be districts, but just avoid using the word fire authority to avoid that confusion.
All right. Helpful. Okay. Chief Darby.
I was just gonna say, to Chief Cook's point, Pang and K Falls are governed by the Oregon Military Department.
Okay, so we could add those in to the federal maybe. And just
State
have-
agency, state agency.
But that'd be state agency, not military department.
Yep.
Yeah, this federal. Okay.
It's
Okay.
kind of weird. I was in the Oregon National Guard. I used to work there in Salem, and Oregon Military Department is the governing authority over those two entities. They do have federal employees on case-by-case basis, but generally speaking, the Adjutant General and the State Military Department govern those two organizations.
Copy. Okay. Thank you. Cassie,
Yeah.
is that all pretty helpful, or do you have any kind of, is it clear as mud? Have any questions there?
Yes. I mean, we'll go through this, and if we have any questions, we'll reach out.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for that conversation. I believe those are the comments that people made in the history section. And so we can sort of just slowly move down through here. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read through it, but are there any other questions or comments on the history section? It's about 2-ish pages. Okay. All right, seeing none. So we're into findings and challenges. And so this is really the core of the report. As I mentioned at the top of the program here, at the very kind of at the end, we have listed the short-term items, and then we link to the Excel document that shows all of the individual recommendations as we went through chapter 478 as a task force. But the big ticket items that we've brought out, we've really put into these findings and challenges section. And that's because there isn't necessarily a lot of precise recommendations for what to do in these situations. It's more that we really want to bring these topics up and start the conversation at a higher level with the legislature and amongst the fire folks here as we move forward in the legislative cycle. So with that in mind, we'll just sort of walk through the findings and challenges section by section. And there's about half a dozen sections that Cassie mentioned when she was talking about the whole report, and we'll just go one by one. So the first section here is cost recovery for services performed and response. And yeah, James, you have a question?
Yeah, I don't have any data to back this up, but I know when we talked about this in one of our first meetings, I wonder if a better word for many would be most. That's what I gleaned from the discussion in the first meetings, that it was actually most fire agencies don't have that tax base to cover everything, but maybe I read that wrong, and it is just many rather than most. But
Oh, you're saying right here. Okay. The first word here under sufficient, insufficient tax base. Many or most. Do other folks have thoughts on that? I feel like that actually might have been something that that was changed at one point already, but I don't remember the reason for that. Does anybody have a problem with changing it to most?
I believe it should be most. I mean, I think it would be subjective to say many or most. We'd have to actually take a look to and ask everybody if their tax base is sufficient to cover all their response costs. But I believe most would be appropriate.
Okay.
Well, is the foundation of what we're saying really is sort of how many people have to go to local option levies or bond levies, that the foundational funding structure. And so that sort of goes back to that Dr. Gemmell research, how many agencies are relying on that? Does it push us over a 50% threshold? Some way to quantify it or objectively say, this is what it is.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've done the exact, statistical analysis to know whether it's over 50% or not. And so I think we'd be making a bit of a guess here of whether, most over 50% is accurate, or, many can be a little bit more flexible, I guess. But if this group is okay with changing it to most, then we can do that. So any objections to that? Otherwise, we'll change it to most. Okay. And Carl, are you with us? You sort of dropped off and came back. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Copy.
Yeah.
Okay. So so that's a change to the first section is the insufficient tax base. Any other questions or changes to that?
Adam, this is Mikey, and I got a really quick comment. So one of the things that I was really proud of with this group is highlighting the date from the last change. I mean, we acknowledged the past 50 years and identified the following challenges. But is there anything in here, and I may have missed it, that says that this has not been overhauled, updated since date X? And for the last 58 years, we have been utilizing the same ORS.
That's a great comment. I think maybe Christy can help me out a little bit with this, but I think just generally, when you have a whole chapter of ORS, there's probably additions and changes kind of over time. It was, of course, probably initially written at one point in time, but that there were changes, probably closely, related to that date. And so I'm not sure there's a single date that we could point to that the chapter was sort of overhauled or redone, because there's probably a lot of changes that have been made over time, but maybe just small changes. Chrissy's giving me the thumbs up.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can look at any individual section of that statute, and usually there'll be like an update date under there, won't there, Christy? So
Absolutely.
you'll see, yeah. So there's been a lot of minor changes in the last 50 years.
Yeah, so Chief Cook, so I think 50 years might just be a little bit more, it's a little more general. I understand it's not as precise maybe as would be nice, but it's probably good in that way because it's not pinning us down with an exact, one thing.
I was just looking for some wordsmithing that, said that throughout the life of ORS 478, incremental changes have been made to meet the requirements of the fire districts. However, this is the first full extensive update since the inception of ORS 478 to actually address all the needs for the fire districts throughout Oregon. Just something rudimentary like that. That's all I was saying.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So Cassie and I can make some changes there of just, some incremental changes have been made, but no large overhaul. Sounds good. Okay, I'm going to keep moving down here. So the next section is visitors bring extra need but not revenue. And folks can look at those 3 paragraphs. Are there any changes there that folks would like to reference or recommend?
My only concern is in that second paragraph, you know, we call them visitors, vacationers, and tourists.
Uh-huh.
But I think we're just talking about tourists, right? To me, it's confusing because it makes it look like it's 3 different types of people, but we're really talking about
Vacations. Use or
I think I would prefer that. Because is there a difference between vacationers and tourists? I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. I think we could probably be consistent with that if that's what folks would like. Okay.
Do they bring in additional capacity or liability?
Well,
I would say liability.
okay.
And
How about response needs? Does that fit instead of capacity?
yeah,
Or response and budgetary needs?
I like the response needs.
Response needs.
And I think it could be implied that none of this stuff is free, so budgetary needs could be redundant. But
Okay.
capacity could be confusing to a non-fire service person reading this.
Copy. All right, so we'll try to scrub the capacity words and change it more to response needs.
yeah, my reference was the second capacity. I also did a big conversation was cost recovery. And it might be helpful to weave in that as a concept is cost recovery for the services provided to the visitors.
And I think we have, let me see here, we have
Later.
that, yeah. Here, cost recovery models is sort of the one downstream from where we're at.
Thank you. That works. Thanks.
Okay, yep. All right, any other questions about or thoughts on this first one, the visitors bring extra need but not revenue? Otherwise, let's maybe move to the classification of service providers creates challenges. And that is just those 2 sentences or three sentences, 2 paragraphs. Any questions or thoughts on that? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. All right, so the next one, as was just mentioned, is the cost recovery models are long and burdensome. It's just one paragraph on that, and there's a link to the OSFM's mobilization plan.
You'll notice in the second sentence there, you know, we use the word departments, and going back to our discussion, we want to be precise. Might use fire agencies rather than departments. Same in the system development charges limitations where it mentions fire departments.
Copy.
But-
Yep. I think Cassie's changing. Cassie has her own document open and she's making changes as we speak while we're going through on this solid, like unchangeable document. Great.
Adam,
Thanks,
I'm not
James.
s- Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking on that, cost recovery models are long and burdensome, sort of redundant. I'm just wondering if it isn't cost recovery models are burdensome and ineffective, right? At the end of the day, it's a lot of work, it's difficult, it takes a lot of time, and it doesn't result in a lot of revenue being generated.
Copy. Sounds good. Christy,
So what page are we on?
we're on page 9. Well,
9.
sorry. Yeah, page 9 of the report that was sent out.
Okay, so I do have a comment that I'm having some technology problems right now, but I will forward to both Adam and Cassie. But regarding the conflicting cost recovery laws section on page 9, second paragraph.
Yep.
I believe that's not quite correct and a little unclear. While we do have ORS 478-310, which allows us to respond in certain unprotected lands and on transportation routes and for aircraft incidents. ORS 478-702 does not pertain at all to that. ORS 478-702 is just the annexation definitions. So I think we might either have a site mistake in there or maybe a bigger miscommunication about whether we have conflicting cost recovery laws. Or lastly, always an option, I'm just misunderstanding and perhaps the author was trying to get at something that I don't quite understand or see readily.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy. My understanding, and folks here correct me if I'm wrong as well, because of course we're all capable of being incorrect, is that there's 2 different items in here, and one of them is that if a fire district responds to someone outside of their protection boundaries, then there's a certain rule about how they should be paid. And then also, we say on the other hand here, if a responding agency has somebody within their coverage area that has not been annexed, or like you said, it's about annexation. If they haven't been pulled into that yet because they opt not to be, then that in theory could be 3 times the amount. And so that's a different rule. So that's my understanding. And so it is a little bit apples to oranges, but they both are connected to cost recovery. It's just one is outside the bounds of the district and one is inside the bounds of the district for different reasons. Am I right on that, folks?
You are, and I'm just wondering how we effectively address it without causing conflict, because this 478-702 is an issue that the Oregon Fire Service advocated really strongly for, right? For this change in annexations law. It's brand new. People are establishing coverage areas now. Probably, I don't know if anybody's completed the process fully yet, but I wouldn't want to give the impression that these statutes are bad, they're wrong, they're confusing because they're different. We really pushed hard for 702. It's just a different. It's all related to annexations, like what Christy is saying. It's not part of a normal cost recovery on transportation routes or anything like that. So, just how we maneuver through there without giving people the impression that we need to change 702.
Sure.
Because we don't.
Is there an alternate kind of phrasing that folks feel like would be helpful here? I would say we could just sort of work on it a little bit, but the problem is if we do that, then we don't necessarily get back to this group for approval.
I'm happy to help work with Cassie offline about that. I think just some tweaks because, like I said, 310 deals with unprotected lands outside of the service district, annexation, is only for areas inside, or how we get areas inside our service district. And so it's a little bit of an apples and oranges, although I do understand why people are looking at that. But they're not necessarily conflicting. That's the
Yeah.
concern I have.
Okay. Are folks here okay with Christy and Cassie and I kind of working on that, massaging it a little bit? And I'm hearing from Chief Johnson as well that we don't want to point at 702 as a problem so much as just something to maybe or maybe not mention. I'm seeing some thumbs
comfortable
up.
with that. Yep.
Thanks, Chief. I'm seeing thumbs up from Ty and James. Okay. All right, we'll do that. We will work on that. And thanks, Christy, for helping with that.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll keep moving. Let's see, system development charges limitation is the last one in this section. So essentially, this is talking about how funding coming in doesn't really go towards the base system development. Any questions or thoughts on this one?
Right off the bat, should we go fire agencies instead of departments?
I think this is departments though, isn't this? Because this isn't the state. This is departments around the state not being able to bill for their base level needs. Is that? I think that's right. Oh, Christy, you're on mute.
I think that's a problem. Compression and funding is a problem for both districts and departments. There's some tension between the two for that too.
So maybe we say fire districts and departments.
Yes.
But not agencies. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, that might be an understatement, Christy. There's some tension between those two. That's pretty funny. I've not heard the word tension. I've heard a lot of screaming, but no tension.
Just wait till you get to the part with urban renewal issues.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounded like we're pretty good there. Last call.
Not to split hairs, but there is a difference in definition between special district and service district.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Where are you seeing that? Let's see.
It is first sentence under conflicting cost recovery laws.
What page are we on?
Page 11. I'm not seeing it. Sorry. Maybe I'm just blind here.
Are we on the same page? Because 11 doesn't have a subsection.
I'm sorry.
says-
We're on page 9. I think it shows up as 11 on my PDF because there's probably a couple blank pages up above, but we're on page 9 under the conflicting cost recovery laws. So that was the one Christy and Cassie and I were going to work on. And what was that? What was the comment? There's the difference between
that first sentence says outside a service district.
Yes. And what should that be?
Probably a special district or service area.
Okay, copy. You got that, Cassie? Okay, we got that. Thank you, Chief Hussey. Okay, all right, so we're going to move on unless there's other comments to taxing authority and enterprise zones. So the first one, the first two paragraphs is just sort of explaining the topic. Changing demographics, changing response needs. There's a lot of strain on the system. And this also mentions when the Governor's Fire Service Policy Councils brought together leaders from around the state to discuss this in June. And then we dive into fire districts lack authority to increase permanent tax rate. Any thoughts on that? There wasn't anything mentioned in the notes sent in. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the terminology for homeless encampments, if that will be a sensitive issue maybe for state agencies or legislators, and just making sure we're consistent on the bottom of page 9 there.
Bottom of page 9. Oh yeah, we should probably say houselessness there.
Yeah, just to highlight it, and it could be sensitive, the amount of investments and in some of these areas at the state level, and how we work through that, I guess, will be important.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. All right. And then with the fire districts lack authority to increase permanent tax rate, any thoughts there? Fire districts control their own budget. The challenge is in the inability to increase the permanent tax rate. Fire districts can't keep up with inflation and rising expenses. Rapid growth. Increase in 911 calls. Agencies rely on taxes. Urban renewal districts and enterprise zones can be 40 or 50 years, and we're asking them to be able to offset the loss. Any questions there? Ty.
Adam, I just was wondering if we need to say, it says frozen for 30 years. I'm not, if we should just say decades, or just a generic versus saying 20, 30, 40,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's different cases. I think we can do that. So taxing can be frozen for decades. Thank you. All right. Next one is tax levies are a critical tool for funding fire departments. If levies pass 2 or 3 times in a row, perhaps they could become part of the permanent tax structure. Just a suggestion. Probably a big ask, but something that is worth putting down. The next one is compression can reduce tax collections, just kind of a statement as well. Any questions there? And then we go to economic development programs can reduce funding and increase demand. And we were very, it was very important for us to make sure that we're not trying to say that these programs are bad so much as just that they have impact on us as well. So, they provide benefits, they create jobs, strengthen the economy, but they can also change the property tax assessments. And one option is that they have a reduction in fire departments' budgets. And then a solution is recommended. We also talked about data centers, which can cause issues in some areas of the state.
I thought actually this was pretty nice. This could have been a lot more severe, frankly, from a demonstrative kind of statement that the tax increment and LID discussion, right? So I thought this did a pretty good job of making it understandable, but it's still hard to explain to somebody who doesn't necessarily live in this world, right? Tax increment financing, where the taxes actually don't go up, they just get diverted, right? Yeah. So it's hard to, like the data center discussion, if you're from Umatilla, or not Umatilla, but Crook County, and now, in 27, you'll finally get some tax revenue off those great big buildings in their district. but there was never a tax increase. It was just not paid, or diverted to help those corporate giants build buildings.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's worth saying, or I do think this was a good example of trying to explain something without punching someone in the face. So good job on that.
Thanks, Carl. And I know that this section did have several revisions. I think it probably did read at the beginning as a bit more of a punch in the face, and we've definitely massaged it. I know Chief Johnson did some work on it, and others, to make sure that it was a little bit more cordial. And to your point, Carl, it is complicated, and I think that a lot of these subjects are going to be, they're going to have to be conversations if we want change on them. They're going to have to be conversations in the future, and this is just sort of that, just pulling the topic out and making sure that it's highlighted. Yeah.
And Adam, I'm sure Cassie's on it, but just just trying to think in the middle of that paragraph, it increasing service demand on fire departments. So we almost have to do a word search for the word fire department and make sure it shouldn't be district, agency, whatever. So it's more on fire districts.
Okay. Yep, copy. Yeah, and whenever people see that, I appreciate you pointing it out, because Cassie's going through and making changes as we go through. So she'll make those corrections now, but we will also go through after this conversation and do our best to check all of those phrasings or phrases. Yeah, thank you. All right. Moving on. Next is update tax assessment authority. Fire departments should be able to access taxes or to assess taxes and collect fees from entities that increase the work burden. Critical infrastructure, publicly owned facilities are exempt. Agricultural properties are limited sometimes. Another challenge is related to restriction of properties of 5 acres or more, but this is out of scope. And the goal of addressing these tax-related issues is to lessen the negative impacts. Again, to Carl's point, trying to be polite about how we say it. Any questions or thoughts there?
I have a small comment on this. So I would agree. I agree with Carl, and I would agree that we have to say it nicely, but somewhere in here we need to make the point that the fire departments throughout the state of Oregon are doing, for say, $100,000 worth of work and receiving $10,000, and our workload is increasing drastically on a regular basis. 911 has become the problem solvers of everything. 911 is called for the weird smell and the EMS and the fire, and this is not what it was designed for originally. I mean, I know this is an edge of a rabbit hole, but somewhere in here, still saying it nicely, we need to make sure that the legislatures and the public know that the fire districts or fire departments are doing this much work now on a system that was designed for this much work.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chief Cook. Yeah, maybe we can put something in that third paragraph there about just the capacity. I know that in future sections, this one is really focused on tax authority and enterprise zones, and we do have, adapting to EMS modernization focus, recruitment, workforce service levels, things like that ahead, and I think we do mention it a little bit more in those sections, but I think maybe we can add just a half a sentence in here about that of, we're just oftentimes underfunded for the amount of work that we're taking on.
I'm just going to pop in here. Oop. Sorry, I'm just going to pop in quick. Chief Cook, that's a really great point. And I know that you haven't seen it yet, but the convening of the fire service document really focuses very, very heavily on that. That unfortunately is not done yet because our fire season just exploded for us. So that draft is still in draft form, but it does heavily talk about that, I think, in a really eloquent way. But I do like the idea of adding that sentence in, and then when that report is done, hopefully we can link the two, or at least have them on the same page so that they're both available to people.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a sentence that says something to the effect that we were the only place that stayed open during COVID, besides Fred Meyer Fuel, and somehow make that sound awesome in there. As an example, maybe I don't know, but I like the direction something like that as an example could provide in this section, because we weren't as individual fire districts specifically able to go and access ARPA funds, for example, to handle increase or anything like that. So I think that's a great example of this ORS not able to cover the kind of city department issue as opposed to the district issue. Something to consider.
Thanks, Carl. We'll have to get a quote from you to put in there.
That'd be good. One of my favorites is we're the only ones that stayed open during COVID. I think that's important to remind folks.
Yeah, I like that. It's what we oftentimes don't talk about ourselves enough, you know, because we're all modest, but it's true. It's absolutely true.
And Adam, I'm thinking about that paragraph, real short one, that starts out, says another challenge is related to the restriction of taxing properties of 5 acres or more. We can tax properties of 5 acres or more. It just depends on it, whether they're forest land or if they're classified lands or not. So I'm wondering if we don't tweak that a little bit and say another challenge is related to the inclusion or the restriction on taxing properties of 5 acres or more that are that are included or that are identified or classified as forest land. Because technically these lands are not in your fire district if it's more than 5 acres, right? So it isn't that they're in your fire district and you can't tax them. They're not in your fire district. Statute restricts them from being in your fire district if they are classified. So maybe a little more work, and I'm happy to work with you a little bit on it, but and maybe that's getting too deep for what we're doing, but
whatever you'd like to help us with that would be great. I just know that because it's out of scope, I hesitate to do too much. I mean, I think, you know, tweaking it's great, but I would just say maybe don't put a whole bunch more in there just because we're trying to stay away from it and just mention it.
Yeah. Perfect.
But, yeah. All right. So whatever, we'll work with you on that. Thanks, Chief. Okay. All right. We'll keep moving down. So we've got some graphs here about RFPDs by tax category. And then we get to annexation, service coverage, and district boundaries. And there's really just one section for that, which is coordination between fire districts and local governments on annexation. Well, it looks like we have the paragraph there twice, so we'll move down. So it's a well-known topic. Just sort of gives a little bit of an outline here. And then hold on, let me see if this is yeah, so it's really more of just a statement there on the annexation piece. And then we move almost straight down into unprotected and underprotected lands. And for that, we have 2 sections. One is underprotected lands or underfunded coverage on lands within service areas. And then the other one is underprotected lands. Are there any questions or thoughts on those? I'll give you a second to read through them. These are more general, not a lot of specifics. I think it's just sort of a bigger problem. And I'll just remind folks that on in Senate Bill 762 back in 2021, there was a section in that bill that talked about coming up with a plan to have coverage for all lands in Oregon. And that's still something. I think the deadline for that's like 2027 or something. So it's still out there. All right, if there aren't any comments on that, we'll move to adapting to EMS modernization and focus. If folks will remember, we had Dr. Lairfield come in and talk about the EMS modernization work group that he was working with. And I think for the most part, our task force is supportive of the work that they're doing, and in a bit of a sort of position of supporting kind of their work moving forward and deferring a little bit to their work. But we have a brief discussion of that here in the first paragraph. And then we talk a little bit about ambulance service areas' impact on fire resources here. So fire departments providing service for ASAs don't typically provide funding for the fire agencies. Each county establishes ambulance service area franchises. In many rural areas of the state, the population density does not fully pay for the cost to provide service. I think there was a little bit of sensitivity here about, we need to make sure to mention that this is a challenge, but also, we don't want to give up our authority to do this and just push the need towards privatization of this job. Christy, yeah.
Toggling. Strongly recommend that we put in this section that somebody should be looking at the definition of ambulance services. As I've mentioned a couple times, I think there's a good argument that the way we are defining ambulance services does not allow fire districts or fire departments to do in-home service visits or non-transport based care. And we are currently getting reimbursed by the feds for such services. So a lot of districts are starting to do that. It's a good revenue generator. I think our statutes are behind the federal law, and we need to make sure that we have authority to use our ambulances in the way we're currently using. So I think just a simple sentence, we strongly recommend reviewing the definition of ambulance services and making sure it comports with federal law and current practices. Oh, and then lastly, in this section, I do see the district, department, agency differences really causing a little confusion. So we'll have to fix those in this section.
Okay, thank you. Great, I really appreciate that recommendation. Do other folks, before we go to Chief Cook, other folks have thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think with the EMS modernization, all these things happening at the same time or really close together, that makes total sense in taking care of this expanded service opportunity, right? Whether you do it today or not, or you're already doing it, is that it makes complete sense to mention, maybe even going to the point of mentioning EMS modernization or the EMS ORS as being needed as as you said, comported or put into this this paragraph.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. Mike, Chief Cook.
Well, first of all, I thank Chrissy for stealing the first part of my thunder. I agree 100%. And what I was going to kind of meld that into is, so our previous section as well as this EMS section with ASAs. So something that has happened in Klamath County, and I don't quite agree with it. And I know that actually this is across the state. So the county commissioners and the county emergency managers found a way to kind of fix those unprotected areas. And just like other places across the state, what happened is they've assigned ASAs to all the transport agencies. And then the transport agency that is assigned with, that is part of the fire department, that becomes their response area. And so my fire district, I have 105 square miles of taxpayers that pay for protection in that 105 square miles. But I have 1,100 square miles of ASA, and that has now become my primary response area for the county, along with 8 other departments in the county. And so what has happened is, and I don't know how the fix is, but it kind of ties into what Chrissy said, is we're trying to find different ways to gain revenue to cover 1,100 square miles when we're only getting paid for 100. And this kind of happens across the board. So, I mean, is anybody else seeing that? I mean, you're covering a lot larger area than you're being paid for.
Chief Cook, your 1,100 miles is only your ambulance service area, or are they stating that you have to provide fire protection in that 1,100 square miles too?
So we provide fire protection in that 1,100 square miles. And when my 2 neighbors go out and the primary volunteer don't have coverage, that my expanse area goes to 2,500 square miles, which becomes primary fire and EMS response on a regular basis. That happens probably 2 weeks out of every month. But it's across the board in Klamath County. District 1 has the same challenges. You know, they have 200 square miles of fire district, but they will cover 500 square miles of primary firefighting response. And are we seeing that over in the other counties? Because to get coverage on the full 6,500 square miles of the county, granted there are some ODF and Forest Service, the local fire districts are covering the entire county as per the ASAs.
Yeah, Chris.
Well, just kind of building on what Chief Cook was just saying, when I was at Crook County, the ASA there, I believe, was 3,000 square miles. Fire district about 250 square miles. So, you know, again, stress on resources, you know, makes it rough.
Christy.
I don't know enough about ASAs. So Chief Johnson, please do jump in here if you disagree. But my understanding of ASAs is, first, look at the ASA, right? You're agreeing to do something in there. And it's usually just ambulance service. It's not fire protection. The other thing I think is very important is that if your fire service response for fire prevention, fire services area has been that blown up, either under your ASA misunderstanding or understanding, whatever, that's going to affect your response times. It's going to affect your insurance rates, everything. Genoa needs to know about that because the legislature needs to know about that. I'm sorry, I represent the state now. I don't represent individual fire districts, but it's just like ingrained in me. If we are carrying the water for the rest of the state by overextending ourselves, the legislature needs to know and Genoa needs to know.
Thanks. And Chief Cook.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I want to stay out of the rabbit hole of trying to get a hold of numerous legislatures that never return the call. So I'll stay away from that. But that being said, I would agree. So if you take that great big 2,000 square miles and you put the little 100 in the middle of it, you're right. I do send my ambulances and EMS out. However, considering the area, if it's a multiple multiple MVA, multiple cars, or other challenges, I feel obligated to make sure that I send an additional crew to keep my ambulance safe and to assist with that. So, and we do have billing mechanisms in place. Collections are obviously a challenge, but it's basically just a geographical issue of a large county with small fire districts and a large amount of unprotected area and no mechanisms in place to cover those unprotected areas. So the fire departments, just like the other 306 across the state, good people doing great things, that morals and values and ethics, we have to make sure we're covered to help cover people. But there's no mechanism in place to identify that or to let people know what is happening out here, especially in the remote rurals, especially Eastern Oregon. So I know that wasn't very elegant, but we have to cover, we have to protect, but how do we do it and still have enough monetary and fiscal ways to do that?
Thank you. Chris, you still have your hand up. Was that from before, or is that a new comment?
Sorry about that. That's from before, so
All good.
there, I unraised it.
So really appreciate everybody's comments here. Is there, I feel like this is an issue that we could go a lot deeper into, but for today's purposes, is there anything that we want to change with regard to this recommendation? It does say, I know it's pretty general and not a lot of teeth, but it says, the use of property taxes to subsidize ambulance transport services can negatively impact the ability of some fire departments to provide the level of fire protection needed in the community. Is that sufficient, or is there more that we would like to add to that?
Adam, my initial comment that the whole purpose was to tie in the previous section with ASAs, that some fire departments, and once again, we'd have to get a hold of the doctor to find out what the statistical numbers are, but some fire departments are augmenting the ASAs or the unprotected areas for coverage. So the ASAs all of a sudden become covered by the fire departments. Does that make sense? That's what I was trying to tie in, that the ASAs all of a sudden become coverage areas for some fire departments throughout the state.
Okay. So what would the phrase or the sentence, some fire departments are augmenting ASAs for fire coverage? Is that, I'm trying to come up with actual language here that that Cassie can put in that we can all sort of get behind. Or is there something, Chief Cook, that you'd sort of prefer?
I think Mike and Roger are better wordsmiths than me, but find some way to make sure that we're showing that the fire service is finding a way to still provide service and coverage in these non-protected areas that they're assigned an ASA in.
Yeah, Carl?
Yeah, I wanted to propose, instead of subsidize ambulance transport, I think provide, because to Chrissy's point, we all said that we would be ASA providers, right? Not specific to a necessarily a boundary that matches the fire district, right? We have a 200-mile fire district and a 1,000-mile square mile ambulance district. So subsidy implies that there could be a fund that is just ambulance, as opposed to the fact that there's property tax and billing and GMT and. But I do think it needs to be spelled out maybe in more detail here that because of the expanded nature of what EMS has done in the last 3 to 5 years, it's put, and some of that's wall time, some of that is mental health interaction, because a chest pain call is pretty easy. You go on a chest pain call, you're at their house for 10 minutes, you do the 12 lead, you get them moving to the right place right away. Mental health calls can take, an hour before you ever even move, and then not have a real place to take someone. So I would propose to provide ambulance transport services can negatively impact, for all the reasons I was just talking about, so many more. Right. So if 80% of the state is covered by fire, providing ambulance service, I think we need to talk about that in a very practical manner, like Mike was talking about, in regards to, hey, when we go somewhere, it's not 2 paramedics and an ambulance. We send the fire engine because we need to have that many people to take care of that call. And I completely support that. But I think subsidy or the word subsidize may give non-insiders a different, maybe a different view of the ambulance discussion, maybe, for lack of a better term. Thanks.
Thanks, Carl. Maybe what I would propose in this specific situation is, if folks are okay with it, is we make that change of subsidy or subsidized to provide, and then would Chief Cook, maybe Carl, maybe Chief Johnson, maybe the 3 of you could come up with a sentence here or so to put in that would help alleviate the concerns that you have. Would that, I think the 3 of you have more expertise on this than maybe Cassie and I do, and so I want to make sure that it's written correctly. I don't know if Cassie and I would word it quite right.
Yeah, I'm happy to work on it with Carl and Mike.
Great. Okay, that would be really helpful, and if you could get that to us, say by the end of tomorrow, that'd be really helpful.
And I think just while we're talking about this sentence in and of itself, I think we can take out can negatively impact the ability of some fire departments. I think we take out the word some and talk about our fire district, some fire departments and districts to provide the level of fire protection needed in the community, along with, right, level of fire protection needed in the community. Because we're talking about the same group of people. If you're cross-trained dual role firefighter paramedics and you're on a EMS call for 3 hours, that means that there's no fire protection in many communities across Oregon. So yeah. I think that somehow we need to explain that, is that while it's a good value going in, that may be something that's, or no, it's not maybe, it does cost us in fire protection ability. If we're starting the day with 6 people and they end up all going on 3 different medic unit calls, that leaves fire protection at 0 or next to 0. So I think somehow we have to be able to articulate that in this discussion about ASAs, is we're staffed like it's 1990 and it's 2025. So I think that whether it's career or volunteer, it doesn't matter. There's not enough people doing the work. And somehow we have to be able to articulate that this ambulance service impact, for a multitude of reasons, not just, poor legislation or the AS 696 ASA language is, written by John Kitzhaber in, 1987 or whatever it was. But the fact that the business has changed, and it would be nice, while we're updating a 50-year-old statute, to really put that in there, because so many fire departments, the majority of fire departments really, other than maybe the North Willamette Valley, provide ambulance transport exclusively for their communities.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. That's Put very nicely. I see that Chief Hussey put in a sentence in the chat. I'll read it really quick. Maybe this is something that people could agree to put in there. It's the reliance on property taxes to provide ambulance transport service jeopardizes the ability of districts to provide the level of protection needed in the community. Does that fully, I mean, it's not going to fully capture, but does that encompass folks' thoughts, Chief Cook and others, or is that, do we want to kind of add to that?
I would like a friendly amendment and put fire protection needed in the community.
The level of fire protection needed in the community. Okay.
Yeah, I do like the sentence. So good job.
Adam, could you say that again one more time?
Sure. I'm going to do it with Carl's addition. The reliance on property taxes to provide ambulance transport services jeopardizes the ability of districts to provide the level of fire protection needed in the community.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I like it.
And then maybe with the EMS modernization and our previous talks about other than transport, maybe we just somehow provide legislative ambulance service as opposed to transports, or however you want to say that, but take the word transport out. And I don't know, maybe this is that, you know, the ambulance implies moving the patient. So maybe we talk about keeping it with our team on the EMS modernization and provide out of hospital care or something to that effect. Do you see maybe where that would be not so reliant on physically moving someone, the statement, not so reliant on transporting someone, but just taking care of them?
Boy, that's a good point, because we're drawing down resources, just provide extrication, hazmat, traffic control. I mean, absolutely. I think those are good words.
Okay. Yeah, this is a great conversation. I think there's probably more here than we're capturing in, I think Chief Hussey's sentence there was great with the addition of Carl's fire protection, but maybe there's a little bit more here that we want to dig into. So let's still have Chief Johnson, Chief Cook, and Carl get together, and however you want to look at this ambulance service area impact fire resources section, maybe send Cassie and I an idea by the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll work that in there. I just want to make sure that we get everybody's ideas captured.
Cassie, would you shoot me Chief Hussey's statement so we can build off of it, please?
Yeah, I sure will. And I took that statement and I kind of inserted in, I think, what Carl was saying, and I just put it in the chat too. So I don't know if that's helpful. But who are the three that I should be emailing?
Chief Johnson, Chief Cook, and Carl.
Okay. I will
And
do
then
that.
Thank you. And then Carl, you have your hand up still?
Yeah, inadvertently. I don't want to. I'm going to take it down.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Great conversation. Thanks, folks. Unless there's any other comments here, we'll keep moving, and the three of you can come up with that language.
Sounds good.
Right. Okay, so the next section, and there's several sections here that are a little bit smaller, but we have reimbursement rates are insufficient. It just sort of says reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid are challenged because rates are low and do not cover the cost of service. Many people don't have private health insurance and use Medicare and Medicaid, leaving a gap in funding for fire service. I'm going to do a couple of these, and then you can do comments on any of them. Alternative transport options. We need options to bill for alternative transport. Paramedic transporting in ER as a one-size-fits-all approach is not working. Alternative options to doctor's offices, urgent care, etc. And And then maybe I'll add one more, the transport ties up resources. So this is all stuff we've been talking about here. EMS calls have a compounding effect for the fire service because they take fire engines out of service, leaving gap for other calls across the state, especially and in remote areas. Reimbursement rates need to increase to cover the cost for essential services. So a bunch of those kind of similar topics to what we were talking about before. Out of those three, are there any thoughts?
I like keeping it sort of general at a high level, Adam, for this report, since the focus was on fire protection for this committee, right? And we know there's going to be such a deep dive with modernization. So I think just highlighting, to me, highlighting these high level issues, supporting the work of MES modernization is the right spot for us, because you could dig down into these for forever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Chief. And then the next section here kind of digs into that, exactly what Chief Johnson just said is, fire service representation with EMS modernization. So the House Bill 4081, just making sure that we have a seat on those committees is really important, and that the statute and the rule needs to recognize that the fire districts provide care beyond fire. All right. Last one in that section is the costs and demand are outpacing funding and resources. So a lot of these things that we've talked about, we've just really broken it down into issue by issue to really clarify and make sure that they don't get lost in a topic. And so, of course, we're doing more than we're getting paid for here, and that we have resources for. Any more questions or thoughts about any of those sections in that? Let's see, that's the adapting to EMS modernization focus section. Going once, going twice. All right, so the next section is recruitment, workforce, and service levels. The first piece in that is reduction of volunteers. Volunteer numbers are declining in Oregon. Historically, Oregon's relied on volunteers, especially in rural areas. Agencies are adapting and working with volunteer staff they have, but it's clear that that we need a better solution to find more volunteers. And then, of course, the reference to the 2022 firefighter capacity work group that Representative Evans was a big part of. The next section is recruitment and retention of fire service employees. Fire agencies must learn and adapt to the concerns of those who want to work there. Various challenges with recruitment at every level. And I think that's pretty important. It's everybody from the fire chief down to the the folks who are starting out. There's a difference in the in the workforce, work-life balance, the difference between looking for a whole career versus sort of a shorter term job, and then a lot of turnover.
I think it's important here to talk about what a lot of turnover is. For the fire service, we typically lived at 2%, and now we're about 5%. So
Okay.
we're not, it's not, I don't know that it's, I think there are some things within this paragraph that are certainly true, and the work-life balance, and we only need to look at what's going on right now today. So if we have 900 firefighters on duty a day in Oregon for 98,000 square miles, and about 875 of them are either on duty at their own home fire station or they're out camping in one of our luxurious forests trying to put out huge forest fires. So, or doing urban protection or whatever their current assignment is this 15 minutes. is that we just don't have enough people, whether they're career or volunteer, we just don't have enough people. And because we can't take from everywhere that has people and put them where there aren't people. And that's what we're doing right now. And we do every summer. And it just started and we're out of people, right? Does anybody have any extra people hanging out right now? No, of course I don't. Unless we want to put Randy on the end of a hoe and have him go rake the area around his house, right? So this is tough. This is tough, and I don't know if we need to be more. This is certainly an area I have a lot of interest in, but we just don't have enough people doing this work, and for a multitude of reasons, and they talk about some of them here. But really, the ability to afford is really where we're at ultimately, right? Our earlier discussions about tax limitation and all the other challenges we have. But it really does. There's not an easy fix other than throwing a ton of money at it, right? And the other groups like the Wildland Funding Group and those folks, they have $500 million ask. So I think it's going to be interesting, and this needs to be, I'd love to see this all bolded, but I know it won't be. It's okay. But those are all things.
Yeah, thanks, Carl.
Actually, I'd like to jump in here real quick. I once again agree with Carl. The one thing that I know that the purpose of what we were supposed to do with the 478 task force, but one of the things that we alluded to in the very beginning of this is all hazards. So the 478 was designed for special districts to be fire districts to go out and protect with fire. And what has happened over since 1957 or whatever is we have become all hazards, the problem solvers of the world with 911, from everything on hazmat, technical rescue, EMS, wildland, and structural. And so I don't know if there's a way to address that, but highlighting all hazards or getting through to the legislature from this task force that, hey, we started with job number 1 and now we have job 1 through 5 at the same amount of funding, is kind of something I'd like to see highlighted somewhere, somehow.
Okay. Thanks, Chief Cook. Yeah. Maybe we could say something about just kind of the growth of tasks associated, or the growth of demand associated with a job that used to just be about fire. I think we can, Cassie and I can come up with a sentence there to put in. Thank you. All right, we'll keep moving. Next one is extend OSFM wildfire season staffing grant program. So this is one of the more specific asks that's in this recommendation, and it's a little bit addressing some of those issues that are up above, but we've just experienced such such support for the wildfire staffing grants that we've put out there, and it's really made a big impact on the ground. And so everybody, I think, is pretty supportive of that. So that is a standalone recommendation here. Yeah, James.
Yeah, so Oak Ridge, we love this grant. The problem we're running into is we can't hire anybody because everyone makes more money going and doing the wildland firefighting directly. And I just don't know if there's a way to capture that somehow, because there's a very good chance we're going to have to give the money back because we've had 0 applicants. And I just don't want to see the grant program going away if a lot of departments end up not spending that money. Because as a legislator, I'm gonna look at that and say, oh, no one's using this money. We don't need it. We can cut it. But I think it's I wouldn't want to see it go away, because it could just be, this year is extremely bad, although I don't see it getting any better. You know where I'm getting with this? Love the program. It's just we can't use it.
Yeah.
And I talked to a chief of another local agency, and he was saying the same thing.
Appreciate that
So,
comment, James.
James, this is Carl. If it's a dollar per hour discussion, right? You're competing with maybe private fires for those same wildland firefighters or what have you. Is there numbers within this paragraph that would make it more competitive for you to offer up? I'm not looking specifically at your job app, but if you were able to, in the grant program, bring more money to the table to create um, a want or a opportunity, maybe is a better word, opportunity to come to Oak Ridge wildland, is that possible?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If we could offer the higher wages that were, at least somewhat competitive with the other wildland firefighting opportunities out there, then yes, I think would be more successful.
Okay. If we have, so this is going to be a legislative ask, 762 part due or whatever they end up calling it. Adam, is this something that maybe we could talk to Travis and the fire marshal about stepping up the remaining monies for this? Obviously this fire season might be a little bit late, but really look at a little bit deeper dive in this staffing program to make sure we are keeping up with the cost of labor, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk with Travis and Mariana and others about this. I know that it's a bit of just this balancing act, right? It's sort of wanting to try to distribute a little bit of money for the greatest impact across the state. And a lot of times I think people know $35,000 isn't enough. It's not sufficient for anyone. But it does kind of give, and again, this is focused for agencies whose property tax is less than $2 million. And so it's really focused or prioritized for folks with sort of smaller agencies. And I'm sure there are some tweaks to it. I'm not intimately familiar with exactly every piece of this program, but I'm sure there's some tweaks that could make it a little bit better. And perhaps that could be part of the ask when we go back to the legislature. But this is definitely something that the agency is asking for. And it is part of the wildfire funding work group conversation as well, this and the engine program.
Okay.
Definitely.
James, do you have a good idea what the number is? Let's say, right? Let's say if I had 50 grand, I could do this, or I would be much more competitive. That's typically oversimplifying. But if you had a number and any of your other fire district colleagues around the state that used this grant or thought not to put in because they knew they didn't have enough matching money or whatever. So I think that if you have a direct experience and saying, yep, 35 is not enough, but 50 would knock it out of the park for us. And then that will help Travis and Mariana really kind of drill down a little bit better on making this grant program even more successful than it already is. So if you have those numbers, I would encourage you to send those forward.
Yeah, can do. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure I can get that memo. You guys.
I mean, do you guys agree? I want it to work. I want you guys to be able to put on another 3, 4, 5 guys, or whatever it is, for 6, 8, 10, 15 weeks. And because it does make it's like pre-po. It's so crazy how well that works, and it's relatively inexpensive. And if we just need to focus more attention on this particular thing, Adam, for those two that aren't on the call, I think is pretty important and worthwhile.
Absolutely. I know we'd like to have a discussion if we can make it better. And Chris, you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. I'll keep this brief. This program is a game changer for us. We could do more money. We are putting these people to work. we bolstered our training program. Training directly helps recruitment and retention. We're kind of a gateway for firefighters. We're building some firefighters that are probably going to be looking for a career in the fire service. So I see this program having a big impact down the road, as well as allowing us to get people out the door during conflags. Now, if we can keep our trucks from breaking, we'd be on conflags right now. But, maybe we get an engine next time, right? So I'm really in favor of this. I could spend more of this money. I think we're putting it to good use.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything, Adam, that precludes this paragraph from remaining as it is. I think the agency is just recommending or identifying that this is sort of one-time funding and it needs to be renewed. I think the discussion in the future is at what level it needs to be renewed and how the program changes, right? But for me, I guess I'm comfortable with the way the paragraph is written, just acknowledging that there'll be a funding ask in the future, and we can look for a higher funding level going forward. But just identifying it's successful and it's running out of money and has to be refunded is a key issue, I guess.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, and just as a reminder as well, along with that, there is a wildfire funding work group that's really working on this topic, that's diving into it a little bit deeper. And that's probably more the place that would be worth having the conversation about tweaking it. And as Chief Johnson just said, this is really, it's a lot easier to ask for something that's already defined and has already been created and just ask to renew it than to ask for a bunch of changes, because it holds it up a lot. And so I think probably the place for the discussion of a lot of those tweaks is definitely offline with Mariana and Travis, and also at the wildfire funding work group. All right, thanks, folks. We'll keep moving here. I think we're getting close to the bottom here. So the next section is mutual aid service agreements. We've got growing mutual aid needs. There's a constantly evolving mutual aid network that's really expanded within the last 10 years. This falls to the scope of the fire marshal and it's connected to the mobilization plan. So just kind of putting that out there. Standardized mutual aid and service agreements. I think this is something that Mariah was focused on and is paying attention to. So she's working on that or aware of that. And then continue investment in response-ready Oregon tools. So that's, again, some of those tools that were created within 762 in 2021. And that's immediate response and pre-positioning. And just as Chris was mentioning, with the upstaffing grants being a game changer, this has really been a game changer as well. The immediate response and pre-positioning abilities for us to get people out there prior to the problems happening has really been big to slow things down and stop fires from growing. Any questions on those three?
Adam, this is Mike. I don't have a question. I have a comment on it. That is there, once again, back to wordsmithing. Our mutual aid within the state over the last 5 years has really become more robust. As Carl was saying earlier, the PREPO is a great program that is working better. The communication between all the districts, especially OSFM down to the county levels and the county chief, has really improved over the last 5 years. Is there any way that we could highlight that to give credit where credit's due?
Say that again. So what would your suggestion be in terms of language?
Once again, I defer to Roger and Mike for the wordsmithing, but the mutual aid and the communication for fire response over the last 5 years, in my opinion, I'd like to hear from others, has vastly increased and has become much more robust. Since 2020, I think we really improved things. Just take a look at the lightning bus this year, 142 fires in 1 week. And was phenomenal. We had all the teams out, all the districts and task forces that responded. And I'm just trying to, I'm not sure how to go about saying it, but we have a much more robust program, starting at the OSFM level all the way down to the Fire Defense Board level across the state. Does anybody else have anything to say on that?
I agree with what you're saying, Chief. I'm just wondering if in this last paragraph, right, continue investments, maybe you could add a sentence after the first one there that, these initiatives have proven successful and, in the sense its implementation, including enhanced mutual aid response, more rapid deployment of resource. We could list a few bullets and just add a little sentence there.
I just wanted to highlight that. So we have been highlighting the things that are broken and not working, but I really feel the need to highlight the things that are working correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so okay, so I'm hearing from Chief Cook and Johnson that sort of something maybe in there about how these mutual aid service agreements have really been successful, and that leaning in on them is something that we were interested in doing, kind of moving forward. Does that sound about right? So.
Yep, that works for me if it addresses Chief Cook's recommendation there.
And I think part of the challenge is that a lot of this is done kind of through the agency or through OSFM and not necessarily written out in statute, right? This is service agreement, mutual aid agreements are kind of things that are just, one group working with another group. And so maybe part of, in the future, maybe one of the things is to establish it more in ORS. Or maybe it works really well to not have it there and people appreciate the flexibility. I'm not sure how folks would feel about that, but that might be, because this has been successful, I don't know if that's a reason to sort of solidify it more, or maybe it's successful because it's flexible, right? And that's why it's been successful.
So I'd be curious to hear from the other chiefs and the cooperators in the room. I mean, do they feel the same way? If not, I just wanted to highlight our successes instead of just highlighting the stuff that is wrong. Let's point out some of the things that are working so we can build on that in the future.
Yeah, I actually agree. And maybe we use sentences like as one example and then go into an explanation or prepositioning for one piece. But really that, I mean, this is really an outcropping of COVID. And remember when we went to Fire Defense Board chiefs and to make sure everybody had masks, and we went to one briefing that was put out by not only OHA, but by the fire chiefs and the firefighters saying, yep, we all have the same message, all those things. And look what it really, and really Roger's success of getting everybody together, I think deserves some sort of recognition in this document.
I agree with you, Mike. I think calling attention to effectiveness or even expansion of current programs that operate well is valuable, not just laying out doom and gloom and requests.
Maybe Chief Johnson, would you feel comfortable maybe working with Cassie and I to just develop a sentence or two to put in here about, how this has been successful? We'd like to encourage the expansion, lean in on this.
Yep, happy to help.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we'll work on that if folks are okay with that. All right, thanks, Chief Cook. Okay, keeping moving here. All right, so the last section, pretty simple here, is open burning. And this was sort of a topic that just was kind of on the side, sprinkled throughout. So lightly addressed throughout 478. Must be coordination between and consistency between regulatory entities. Task force recommends all language regarding this be consistent. And then coordinating on air quality, smoke management, and prescribed fire Any thoughts or questions on that? And of course, there was some field burning that was out of scope. All right. Not seeing anything there. So awesome. That gets us through all of the findings and challenges sections. And so we're sort of getting near the end here, wrapping up task force recommendations. And so the recommendations are, even though it maybe feels like this should be the biggest section, I think this is maybe a smaller section because a lot of the recommendations were very small as we went through, line by line with 478. But we've captured those here, and some specific language changes and some kind of language cleanup is identified here. And there really wasn't a lot of specific changes. Most of the ideas fell into those bigger buckets that we have just finished discussing. But what this short-term kind of recommendation section is likely to turn into is OSFM has a placeholder for a 25-22 bill for the 25 session. And so we've started to pull some of all these ideas and put them into a placeholder legislative concept that we are planning on introducing. The exception to that would be if we could find a legislator to introduce something rather than us. I think it would have more potential for movement. But we do have that placeholder, and we're planning on putting that together. So as folks look here, are there anything that stands out as either shouldn't be there or is glaringly missing? Otherwise, we'll kind of keep moving. And we will attach in the appendix the full section by section of 478 that we walked through, which says essentially, it says these changes, or it says leave as is, leave as is, leave as is, modernize, things like that. All right, not seeing any comments. That's fine. Here's the section. I forget who it was who mentioned this. Maybe it was Chief Cook or somebody else. That's the out of scope section from up above. And so as we were going through, we tried to keep track of the main parts of 478 that were out of scope according to the bill, 2522. And so we listed them here. This might not be perfect, but this really captures kind of most of them. And then keep moving. And then we have this mid to long term kind of half a page. And really what this does is it summarizes and captures all of those different things that we talked about in the findings and challenges. So this is kind of more a wrap up of there's some things that are going to be more quick and short term, and those are going to be in the potential legislative concept for our agency that we submit. And then these longer term things, the findings and challenges that we've all talked about, are things that are probably going to take a little bit more medium to long term and need a little bit more energy and work. Any questions or thoughts on that? Okay. And then we have the conclusion. We've looked through, we've done what the bill said. It's the mission of the fire service to ensure the safety of Oregonians. So it's sort of just a little bit of that more standard language. And then as Cassie mentioned up at the top of the hour or a couple hours, the vision to guide future work. This is something that Travis Medema and our folks are sort of working on, and it's just a little bit of all right, so what's next? What's in the future? And then the appendix. And so we've got the bill here that somebody had mentioned about putting in. We've got the Excel recommendations list, which is that short-term changes that'll probably mostly end up in a bill for our agency. Firefighter Firefighter Capacity Work Group report, which is the Rep Evans report, EMS modernization work, which is related to the Mr. Lairfield, Dr. Lairfield. Anyway, so we'll include all of those. Was there, I feel like maybe there was other things that we mentioned throughout that we have linked in the document, and we could potentially put here as well. So, and I think that's the report.
Yeah, just a typo, Adam, on that EMT. It's not EMT modernization, it's EMS modernization there.
EMS, okay, awesome. Cassie's got that. Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. All right, so that's a lot. That's a lot of work. That's the product of, you know, all of your work over the last, what, 9-10 months. And I guess maybe I'll kick it back here to Chair Johnson about how we want to go about, you know, approving or, you know, moving forward with it.
Thank you, Adam. And, you know, our goal today, our hope today was to be able to get through and approve the report. If there were minor little tweaks or spelling changes or just small things to change, staff would do that as they finalize the document. What I heard is a couple areas that will take some small groups working together to come up with a sentence or a little tweaking. So I guess just a thought for the committee, are people comfortable approving this report today and know that there's going to be a sentence added here or there? Christy Munson was going to do a little bit of work. And then maybe we submit those recommended changes out to the group. I'm just trying to get sort of a formalized adoption of this thing so staff can get the work done in time to meet their deadline. So I'm just sensitive to their work and not potentially scheduling another meeting in the future. Just throw that out for the group. How do people feel about that? And what are people comfortable with, I guess, for how we agree on these couple sentences that we have to work on. Chief Cook?
So I would agree. I would actually be willing to make a motion to accept it with the minor changes and the addition of some of the sentences that would be sent out to the group. But great job to the OSFM staff that has put all this together, and thank you very much. But I would be willing to accept it at this point.
Okay. Carl, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have it up twice in the form of a second. I will second Mike's motion to approve with those sentence modifications. I think that would be more than adequate. Thank you. And nice work, Roger. This has been not an easy job herding cats, and you've done a fabulous job. Thank you very much for your effort. And really, Cassandra and everybody at the State Farm Marshal's office, Adam, you guys did a sweet job. This was good. This is good for the Oregon Fire Service.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Carl, and for the team, right? A lot of great input by all the committee members, and OSFM staff is just awesome and makes us all look good, and we'll have a nice polished report when we're done. Is there anybody on the call today that's opposed? We sort of have a motion and potentially second to approve the report with a couple minor tweaks that some subcommittees will work through. Is anybody opposed to that?
I'm not opposed at all. Adam, Roger, I want to thank you guys for what you've done. I think it's great. Wish I could have been more of a participator. I would like to say I'm not a director. I'm actually a fire chief. So I don't know how I got on this committee, but anyway. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think there's a lot of discussions to be had and a lot of stuff that can be fixed, but this is a start. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. All right. Well, Adam, if you're comfortable with that, I'm hearing consensus to approve the report. knowing that we still have some little wordsmithing, some pieces to input from Travis and the agency too. As we develop those, we'll kick them out to the group and gain awareness and consensus on those additions moving forward. But generally, what I'm hearing is the group is supportive of the report as we reviewed it today.
Fantastic. Yeah, really happy to hear that. And it's been, really great working with everybody here. So really appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, so maybe what we'll do is we'll give ourselves until tomorrow evening, so sort of COB tomorrow, to work out some of these final little tweaks. I'll send out an email to the whole group saying that there's some last minute little tweaks that we're working on, but otherwise, those who attended today approved of it as a consensus. And do we want to offer sort of a time period for other people to approve as well, or are we kind of good with the folks who showed up or are in agreement and it's good to move forward?
Yeah, I don't know how the others feel. I guess I'm comfortable of if we have the majority of the committee approving it. Maybe we include that in the minutes and we send it to everybody that the committee met on this date, approved the report. There'll be some minor tweaks to it. If anybody identifies a fatal flaw, notify us immediately. We want it to be right, but we have to keep moving or we won't get it done in time. So.
Great. All right. That sounds good. I'll sort of reference all that in the email that I send out to folks. And like you said, if there's a fatal flaw or if there's something that just really has to be done, we can deal with it on a one-off. But otherwise, yeah, this is great. It's really, really exciting. I know folks are busy with a lot of things right now out in the field and around the state. And so just once again, on behalf of everybody from OSFM, I want to just say thank you for all the time that people have put in and for being here.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
So I guess the last little bit for today, we were going to try to have either Travis Medema or Mariana Ruiz Temple on to give a little bit of a state of the state for what's ahead. I think both of them were hoping to be here, and it looks like they're tied up, and so I apologize for that. I can say that there are a bunch of different work groups and task forces kind of moving at this time. Of course, in addition to this 2522 task force, we've got the wildfire funding work group, which was established through Senate Bill 4133 in the last legislative session. And that's really kind of in the very beginning of its stages, but that has to report by the end of the year. We've got the emergency service, medical services, the EMS modernization work group that was established by 4081 in the 2023 session. That's moving. There's the Program Advisory Council, WPAC, that is making kind of constantly been making progress ever since the 2021 bill. And then, of course, the Governor's Fire Service Policy Council that convened. That was a really wonderful thing, the convening of the Oregon Fire Service. And so there'll be a report on that, as Cassie mentioned. So there's really, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of different moving parts, and this group has been kind of a really fundamental piece of that equation. And even though this report is being finalized and submitted, there's a lot of opportunities for comments and work moving forward on those other in those other places. And I'm sure in the 2025 session, after such a big fire year, that's really the 2020 fire season is what made Senate Bill 762 move in 2021 after that fire season. And I wouldn't be surprised if after a big fire season like this, if we see a lot of legislative desire to do more in the 2025 session. So I think we're heading into potentially some big changes in the next legislative session. So I just encourage everybody to stay engaged and involved as we move forward there. So I think that's probably all I'd have on behalf of OSFM and with our two folks not able to make it today.
Thank you, Adam.
Adam,
Go ahead,
it's
Carl.
Carl.
Yeah, Carl.
Just because of my sign-on difficulties, did you have an update on the Marion County firefighters and the rollover on their fire? Did you have anything that you briefed this group on before I was able to sign on?
I appreciate that, Carl. No, I haven't been very engaged in that conversation, so I wish I could provide an update on that, but I don't have any new information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other business before us today? Anything any committee members have? I see Mike reaching.
I would just like to say thank you. I agree with Carl. Thank you, Roger. You did a phenomenal job leading us. Adam, you and your entire team did a great job. Sorry, in the middle of a call. Did a great job, and it was excellent working with all of y'all. So this was a great experience for me to be able to operate at this level and be part of this committee. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Chief.
Thank you,
Roger.
guys.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just want to say thank you, and I wish I could contributed more. I definitely was a learning experience for me, and I appreciate your time and your patience. I think it's a good document, and we'll just start nipping away at some of this stuff. It's definitely a journey, definitely a journey. Yeah, Mike, James, if you guys want to ever sit down and talk about this stuff, sounds like we've had pretty good successes with this WFS money, and it'd be fun to get together with some of the other chiefs that are doing the same thing and see what everybody's doing. That might be another thing that's coming from this group, is just sharing some thoughts and getting some ideas out there amongst the Oregon Fire Service. So that's pretty cool. And I got to say that the Sisters Bakery has got the best sourdough bread I've ever had. So it's incredible. But you guys take care, and thank you for everything you've done.
Thanks, Chief. All right.
Roger,
Yep,
it's Carl. I did want to comment that I had this meeting going till 1 o'clock. So getting done an hour early is problematic. And we have to work on that. But other than that, thanks for your work again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carl. And if
Carl, if you want to
stay
chat,
online,
or we could just stay on and chat. I mean, we don't know each other that well, so here's an opportunity, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, right. Never mind. Forget that.
all right. Well, great work, everybody. I'm just really proud of the group and the report and staff. Excellent work. So thank you so much for the support and coordination. So, all right. Keep a lookout for any little minor tweaks as the report continues to evolve. But unless something changes, I think this is probably the last meeting of the formal work group. So thank you again for all of your service. It's been a lot of fun and really important work. So thank you, everybody.